In the heart of Paris, 1968, the city was on fire. Students marched in the streets, police clashed with protesters, and the air smelled like smoke, adrenaline, and new ideas. Out of that chaos came The Dreamers, not just a movie, but a manifesto. Directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, the same filmmaker who gave us Last Tango in Paris and The Conformist, this was a film that didn't just look at rebellion, it breathed it. When it hit theaters in 2003, audiences didn't quite know what to make of it. Some called it art, others called it indecent. But beneath the scandal and shock was something much more personal. A story about youth, freedom, and the loneliness of being awake when the rest of the world is asleep. Because The Dreamers isn't really about Paris. It's about us. About that time in your life when you think you can change everything, but slowly realize you can barely understand yourself. At the center of it all is Bernardo Bertolucci, an Italian visionary who always blurred the line between art and reality. He believed cinema wasn't meant to comfort. It was meant to disturb, to question, to pull you into spaces that made you uncomfortable, because that's where truth usually hides. For The Dreamers, Bertolucci returned to the very roots of his own fascination. Paris, the 1960s, the power of film. He wanted to capture what it felt like to grow up surrounded by revolution, both political and personal. Michael Pitt stars as Matthew, an American student wandering through the intellectual streets of Paris, drawn into a friendship, and eventually an obsession, with twins Theo and Isabelle, played by Louis Garrel and Eva Green. Eva Green, in her first ever film role, brought something electric to the screen. She was mysterious yet raw, a symbol of everything unpredictable about youth. Louis Garrel, son of French New Wave filmmaker Philippe Garrel, represented that new generation of actors unafraid to mix intellect and chaos. Together, they created a trio that felt dangerously alive. People living in their own cinematic bubble, quoting Godard and Truffaut, cutting themselves off from the outside world, trying to become the movies they worshipped. Bertolucci wasn't just directing actors, he was orchestrating a memory. He shot the film with warm light, handheld intimacy, and long silences, the kind that feel both safe and threatening. Every frame looked like nostalgia painted in rebellion. In 1968, Matthew is a shy American exchange student who has come to Paris for a year to study French. While at the Cinémathèque Française, protesting the firing of its director, Henri Langlois, he meets free-spirited twins Theo and Isabelle, the children of a famous French poet and his English wife. The three bond over a shared love of film. After dinner with their parents, Theo and Isabelle invite Matthew to stay with them while their parents leave town for a month. Matthew accepts, considering them his first French friends. Matthew becomes suspicious of Theo and Isabelle's relationship after seeing them sleeping nude together. He soon discovers that they have a liberal attitude towards nudity and sexuality. Matthew gradually accepts the twins' unusual relationship and comes to enjoy his time living with them. The three reenact a memorable scene from Bonaparte by breaking the world record for running through the Louvre. And Matthew and Theo engage in playful arguments about Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, as well as the subject of Maoism, which Theo fervently believes in. After Theo loses at a trivia game, Isabelle sentences him to masturbate to a Marlene Dietrich poster in front of them. After Matthew loses at another game, Theo tells him to have sex with Isabelle in front of him, which Matthew reluctantly does. Afterwards, he realizes she was a virgin, and Theo is pleased. As Matthew and Isabelle fall in love with each other, he asks her what she would do if her parents discovered the nature of her relationship with Theo. She replies that she would kill herself. Matthew begins to pursue a relationship with Isabelle, separate from Theo. Matthew and Isabelle leave the apartment and go on a regular date, which he has never experienced before. Theo retaliates by inviting a companion up to his room, upsetting Isabelle. She distances herself from both Theo and Matthew, only to find them next to each other on Theo's bed when an argument between the two turns erotic. She then surprises them with a makeshift bedsheet fort, and the three fall asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, Theo and Isabel's parents arrive home and find the sleeping trio naked in bed together. They are startled by what they find, but let them be, departing after leaving a check. Isabel wakes up and discovers the check, realizing that their parents have found them out. Wordlessly, she attaches a hose to the gas outlet and lies back down with the still asleep Theo and Matthew, attempting to commit murder-suicide. Shortly afterwards, however, they are awakened by a brick being hurled through the window. They discover hundreds of students rioting in the streets. All three of them are overjoyed and proceed to join the protesters. Theo then joins a small team of protesters preparing Molotov cocktails. Matthew tries to stop Theo by kissing him and Isabel, arguing against violence, but he is shunned by both siblings. As Matthew walks away through the chaos, Theo takes Isabel's hand and hurls a Molotov cocktail at a line of police. The police charge the crowd. When The Dreamers premiered at Venice in 2003, the controversy was immediate. The movie was rated NC-17 in the US and outright banned in several countries, including parts of Asia and the Middle East. But here's the truth. It wasn't banned because of what it showed. It was banned because of what it said. The film dared to suggest that freedom, sexual, political, artistic, isn't tidy. It's messy. It's selfish. It's human. And that scared people. Governments didn't want to admit that the revolutionaries of the past were still as confused and fragile as we are today. Critics accused the movie of glorifying rebellion, of romanticizing irresponsibility. But what Bertolucci really did was expose it. He showed that even the loudest voices shouting freedom sometimes hide the quietest insecurities. That behind every act of rebellion, there's a deeper hunger to belong, to be understood, to be seen. In an age obsessed with censorship, the Dreamers forced a question we still haven't answered. Is discomfort the enemy of progress or the beginning of it? Over time, what began as scandal transformed into legend. The Dreamers became one of the most talked about films of the 2000s, dissected in universities, analyzed in film schools, and rewatched by cinephiles who grew up feeling alienated by mainstream Hollywood storytelling. The movie isn't a statement, it's a mirror. It doesn't give you answers. It reflects what you bring to it. Its legacy isn't about rebellion itself, but about what rebellion costs. In many ways, The Dreamers predicted a generation. The way it captures isolation, how these characters live more inside movies than real life, feels eerily familiar in an era of social media and curated identities. Everyone is performing a role. Everyone wants to live cinematically. That's the tragedy of The Dreamers. It shows what happens when imagination becomes a cage. For Bertolucci, it was never about scandal. It was about obsession, about how the things we love most, art, passion, politics, can also trap us when we start mistaking symbols for truth. Film critics called The Dreamers his last great masterpiece, and maybe they're right, because it feels like a goodbye, a farewell to the kind of romantic idealism that fueled the 1960s. By the end of the film, the world outside finally breaks in. The riots grow louder, the students rise, and our dreamers are forced to choose, remain in the fantasy they built, or step out into a reality they no longer recognize. That's the moment that defines the movie, when youth runs out and history takes over. Nearly 20 years later, The Dreamers still divides audiences. Some see it as pretentious, others as poetic. But what keeps it alive is that it dares to be uncomfortable. It doesn't apologize for its contradictions, because that's what being young feels like. Too much of everything all at once. It's easy to forget how radical that message was in 2003, a time when film studios were already playing it safe, polishing edges, testing scripts with focus groups. The dreamers refused to be safe. It felt like something that escaped rather than premiered. There's also something strangely timeless about its core idea, that the most dangerous thing isn't rebellion, it's apathy. The moment we stop dreaming, stop questioning, stop fighting to understand ourselves, that's when revolutions truly die. And maybe that's why the film keeps coming back, because every generation rediscovers that same restlessness. The desire to tear everything down, to start over, to feel something real. The Dreamers reminds us that art can still provoke, that freedom still comes with consequences, and that cinema, even now, has the power to make us uncomfortable in the best possible way. In the end, The Dreamers isn't about three people in an apartment in Paris. It's about everyone who ever felt trapped between who they are and who they want to be. It's about the moment when the world outside your window feels like it's collapsing and you realize you have to decide whether to join it or hide from it. It's about the fire of youth, that dangerous, fleeting flame that believes ideas can save us. Bertolucci once said, "Cinema is a weapon of love." And maybe The Dreamers is exactly that, a film that doesn't shoot bullets, but questions. As the credits roll, you're left with a haunting silence, not of endings, but of beginnings. A reminder that every dreamer, sooner or later, wakes up. And when they do, the world either changes with them or leaves them behind.